Imagine waking up in a 50-degree Celsius insulated condo in Toronto, the sun barely hitting the concrete jungle, and realizing that despite your $60,000 salary, you are effectively poorer than your parents were on a single income in 1985. This is the Canadian paradox. We are told that hard work leads to stability, yet the shadow fact no one mentions is that the Canadian economy is now designed to extract wealth from the worker rather than reward them. You feel that visceral knot in your stomach every time you tap your card at the terminal. It's not just you, it's a systemic design. You are running on a treadmill that keeps getting faster, while the floor beneath you is tilting toward a cliff. We think we are building a life, but in reality, we are just servicing a debt cycle that has no exit strategy. Why does it feel like you're drowning even when you're doing everything right? The answer lies in a hidden mechanism of our economy that most people won't discover until it's too late. But before we reveal that mechanism, we have to look at the silent thief that enters your home every single night through your bank app. The silent thief isn't a person. It's the widening chasm between wage growth and the consumer price index. While the Bank of Canada releases polished reports about inflation targets, the reality at the checkout counter tells a different story. You've noticed your dollar doesn't just buy less, it feels lighter, almost meaningless. When you look at your pay stub, the gross amount looks decent, but by the time the CRA takes their fair share and your provincial taxes are deducted, what's left is a fraction of your buying power from just 3 years ago. We are witnessing the largest wealth erosion in Canadian history, disguised as economic adjustment. You work 40 hours a week, yet your savings account remains a stagnant pond, while the cost of basic survival becomes a raging river. The psychological toll is immense, a constant low-level hum of anxiety that you are one car repair or one interest rate hike away from total insolvency. But inflation is only the surface level. The real trap is much more personal, and it starts with the places we shop every single week, where psychology is used against your survival instincts.
Walk into a Loblaws or a Sobeys, and you aren't just entering a grocery store, you are entering a high-stakes psychological laboratory. Have you noticed how the no-name yellow branding used to represent savings, but now it represents the bare minimum of survival? The Loblaws effect is real. We are paying premium prices for basic sustenance while corporate margins hit record highs. It's a visceral pain to see a bag of grapes priced at $12 or a pack of chicken breasts that costs as much as an hour of labor. Canadians are being gaslit into believing these prices are unavoidable global trends, yet our local reality says otherwise. We are the world's most over-leveraged population, and our grocery bills are the sharpest blade cutting into our disposable income. You leave the store with 3 bags that cost $100, feeling a sense of defeat that lingers until your next shift. This isn't just about food, it's about the loss of dignity. And yet, while we struggle to fill our fridges, the greatest lie of the Canadian middle class is waiting for us at home. The myth of the housing investment that is actually a debt prison. For decades, the Canadian dream was synonymous with home ownership, but in the GTA and GVA, that dream has mutated into a nightmare of mortgage imprisonment. We've been conditioned to believe that $1 million mortgage for a semi-detached house with a leaky basement is an asset. In reality, for most Canadians, their home is a liability that consumes 50 to 60% of their take-home pay. With the Bank of Canada's interest rate fluctuations, thousands of families are seeing their monthly payments jump by $1,000 or more. This isn't building equity, it's paying for the privilege of not being homeless. The housing mirage suggests that as long as the paper value of your home goes up, you are getting rich, but you can't eat your drywall. You are house poor, trapped in a neighborhood you can barely afford to drive through because the cost of gas is another weight on your chest. You're working to pay the bank, who then uses your interest to lend back to you at higher rates. It's a closed loop where you are the fuel. But there is a secret mistake even the most financially literate Canadians make with their TFSA and RRSP that keeps them from ever truly breaking free. The CRA is the silent partner in your career that you never asked for. Tax bracket creep is the hidden mechanism where, as your nominal wages rise to keep up with inflation, you are pushed into higher tax brackets, effectively giving the government a larger slice of a smaller pie. You might get a 3% raise, but if inflation is 6% and your tax rate increases, you have actually taken a massive pay cut. This tax bite is visceral when you realize that in some provinces, nearly half of every dollar you earn above a certain threshold vanishes before it hits your account.
We are told these taxes fund our world-class infrastructure and healthcare, yet we sit in ER waiting rooms for 12 hours and drive over potholes that ruin our suspension. The disconnect between what we pay and what we receive is a primary driver of the stagnation despair felt across the country. You are playing a game where the rules are changed mid-match and the referee is taking a cut of your points. But why do we continue to fall for the investment trap set by our own banks? The answer involves the 3 letters every Canadian knows, but few truly understand. The TFSA and RRSP are touted as the ultimate wealth-building tools for Canadians, but for many, they are used as glorified savings accounts that lose value every day. The TFSA trap occurs when people hold cash or low-interest GICs inside these accounts, unaware that inflation is eating their purchasing power faster than the interest can grow. On the flip side, the RRSP illusion leads many to contribute while in a low tax bracket, only to be hit with a massive tax bill during withdrawal in retirement. We are sold these products by bank advisors, who are often just salespeople with a quota. They steer you toward high-fee mutual funds that skim 2% off the top every year, regardless of performance. Over 30 years, that 2% fee can eat up to half of your total potential wealth. You think you're saving for the future, but you're actually funding the bank's quarterly dividends. The curiosity gap here is, if the traditional path of saving is a dead end, what are the wealthy doing differently right under our noses? To find out, we have to look at the subscription slavery that has turned our monthly budgets into a sieve.
The modern Canadian life is a series of monthly microtransactions that bleed your bank account dry before you even realize it. From Spotify and Netflix to your overpriced Rogers or Bell internet plan, subscription slavery is the new normal. Canada has some of the highest telecommunication costs in the world, and we pay them like a mandatory tax. These $50 or $60 charges seem small in isolation, but combined with buy now, pay later schemes for furniture and electronics, they create a permanent drain on your liquidity. You are essentially renting your lifestyle. You don't own your music, your movies, or even your software anymore. This creates a psychological state of permanent temporary, where you never feel like you've truly arrived. The stress of managing 20 different payment dates is a mental burden that keeps you from focusing on big picture wealth creation. You are focused on the pennies, while the dollars are flying out the window. And speaking of things flying out the window, have you looked at the interest rate on your car loan lately? The new car delusion is perhaps the fastest way Canadians stay poor. Drive through any Canadian suburb and you'll see driveways filled with $80,000 pickup trucks and luxury SUVs. The new car delusion is the belief that a high-interest 7-year loan on a depreciating asset is a sign of success. In reality, it's a financial anchor. With interest rates hovering around 7 or 8% for many, a $1,000 monthly car payment is becoming the norm. This is money that could be compounding in the market, but instead, it's vanishing into the ether of depreciation and interest. Canadians are obsessed with looking wealthy at the expense of actually being wealthy. We trade our time, 40 hours a week of our lives, to drive a vehicle that loses value the moment we pull it into our garage. This is the relatable life trap, the need to keep up with the Joneses in Oakville or Burnaby. But the Joneses are broke too. They're just better at hiding it behind a shiny grill and a financed lease. But there's a deeper reason why we can't save, and it has to do with the banking oligopoly that controls our every move. Canada's Big 5 banks are some of the most profitable institutions in the world, and they achieve this by keeping your money stagnant. The banking oligopoly ensures that while they charge you 20% on credit cards and 6% on mortgages, they offer you a measly 0.05% on your basic savings account. It is a legalized extraction of wealth. We trust these institutions with our life savings, yet they use that capital to invest in high-yield assets, giving us back only the crumbs. This is the low-interest illusion. If you leave your money in a standard Canadian savings account, you are effectively losing 3 to 5% of your wealth every year due to inflation. Your safety is actually a slow-motion fire. The banks aren't your friends. They are corporations designed to maximize shareholder value, often at the expense of your financial freedom. They make it easy to borrow and difficult to grow. This leads to the most dangerous cycle of all, the credit card minimum payment loop, where Canadians are currently carrying record-breaking levels of non-mortgage debt. The average Canadian now owes over $21,000 in non-mortgage debt.
The credit card loop is a mathematical trap designed to be inescapable. By only paying the minimum, you are essentially paying for the interest on the interest, ensuring the principal never shrinks. It's a visceral feeling of dread when the monthly statement arrives, showing that despite your $300 payment, your balance only went down by $20. This is the shadow debt that keeps the Canadian middle class awake at night. We use credit to bridge the gap between our stagnant wages and the rising cost of living, essentially borrowing from our future selves to pay for today's bread and milk. This creates a debt slave class, people who cannot quit their jobs or take risks because they are one missed payment away from a credit score collapse. And just when you think you've managed your budget, a new social pressure emerges that drains your remaining cash: the explosion of Canadian tipping culture. Have you noticed that every iPad screen at every coffee shop now starts its tipping options at 18, 20, or even 25%? The tipping crisis in Canada has reached a breaking point. It's no longer about rewarding exceptional service. It's an expectation tax that adds a hidden 20% to every social interaction. This social pressure is a visceral pain point for Canadians who are already struggling. You feel the guilt trip at the checkout, knowing that the person behind the counter is also underpaid, but also knowing that your own budget is redlined. This culture shift masks the fact that businesses are offloading the responsibility of paying a living wage onto the customer. When you add up the extra $5 here and $10 there, it amounts to thousands of dollars a year in guilt spending. It's another leak in the Canadian financial bucket, one that is socially enforced and nearly impossible to avoid without feeling like a pariah. But while we worry about $5 tips, a much larger ghost is haunting our bank accounts: the weight of student loans that never seem to disappear.
Canada prides itself on education, yet we send an entire generation into the workforce with a student loan ghost hovering over them. Tens of thousands of dollars in debt before they even earn their first paycheck. We were told that a degree was a golden ticket, but for many, it's just a high-interest entry fee to a low-paying job market. The interest on these loans, even when subsidized, is a constant drag on the ability to save for a down payment or start a business. It's a delayed life syndrome. Canadians in their 30s are still living with roommates or their parents because their investment in education hasn't yielded the promised returns. The visceral frustration of being overeducated and underwealthy is a defining characteristic of the modern Canadian experience. You have the credentials, you have the work ethic, but the math just doesn't add up. This leads to a fundamental question: who is actually getting rich in this country? The answer isn't who you think it is, and the myth of the wealth gap is more complex than just the 1%.
We often talk about the 1%, but in Canada, the real wealth gap is between those who owned assets before 2015 and those who didn't. The asset divide has created a two-tier society. On one side, you have the equity rich, older generations or early buyers whose homes have quadrupled in value, allowing them to use HELOCs to fund a lifestyle of travel and luxury. On the other side, you have the rent class, hardworking professionals who are effectively paying for someone else's retirement. This isn't a meritocracy, it's a timocracy. The visceral anger of the disappearing middle class comes from the realization that no amount of hustle can bridge $1 million gap in asset appreciation. We are told to work harder, but the game is rigged toward those who already have a seat at the table. This leads to a sense of nihilism, where young Canadians stop saving altogether because the goalposts move 10 miles for every 1 mile they run. And in Canada, the cost of just existing in the winter adds another layer of financial punishment. The winter tax is a uniquely Canadian struggle. As the temperature drops, the cost of survival spikes. Heating bills for a drafty Canadian home can reach hundreds of dollars a month, and the price of winterizing your life, from snow tires to insulated clothing, is a mandatory expense that many budgets can't handle. The carbon tax, while debated politically, is a visceral reality on every Enbridge or BC Hydro bill. It's a tax on staying warm in a country that is frozen for 6 months of the year. We pay a premium just to inhabit this geography. This seasonal financial blow often wipes out any progress made during the summer months. It's a cycle of 1 step forward, 2 steps back that feels like a natural law of the Canadian economy. You are fighting against the elements and the economy simultaneously. To cope, many Canadians turn to the side hustle, but this often leads to a different kind of poverty. the poverty of time and health. The side hustle burnout is the new Canadian lifestyle. We are told to drive Uber, deliver for Skip the Dishes, or sell on Etsy to make ends meet. But after working a 9 to 5, your body and mind are already depleted. The shadow fact here is that side hustles often yield less than minimum wage when you factor in gas, vehicle wear and tear, and the 30% you should be setting aside for the CRA. We are trading our health and our relationships for an extra $300 a month that immediately gets swallowed by inflation. This is survival mode disguised as entrepreneurship. The psychological impact of never being off the clock is a visceral exhaustion that permeates Canadian cities. We are a nation of tired people trying to outrun a cost of living crisis with a bicycle, and we justify this struggle because of our free healthcare. But is it truly free, or is it another hidden cost keeping us poor?
Canadians wear their free healthcare like a badge of honor, but the hidden medical tax is staggering. We pay for it through some of the highest income taxes in the developed world, yet we still pay out of pocket for dental, vision, prescriptions, and mental health. A single root canal or a pair of glasses can derail a monthly budget. The shadow fact is that our healthcare system is a safety net with massive holes. If you can't afford a therapist at $200 an hour, you suffer in silence. If you can't afford the $1,000 a month drug not covered by the provincial formulary, you go into debt. The free label is a marketing gimmick that prevents us from demanding better value for our tax dollars. We are paying for a premium service and receiving a basic experience. And the stress of navigating the system adds to the emotional pain of the Canadian middle class. This brings us to the ultimate uncertainty. Will there even be a safety net when we retire? The CPP and OAS are the pillars of Canadian retirement, but for the younger generation, they feel like a mirage. With the aging population and the declining ratio of workers to retirees, the retirement anxiety is palpable. We are told the fund is sound, yet the age of eligibility keeps being discussed, and the payouts barely cover a bachelor apartment in a mid-sized city. Most Canadians will stay poor in retirement because they relied on a system that was never designed to be a sole source of income. The shadow fact is that the government's inflation metrics often understate the real cost of living for seniors, particularly in housing and care. You are forced to contribute to a system today that might not have the same purchasing power when you need it in 30 years. This uncertainty drives lifestyle creep, the desperate urge to spend now because the future feels so unstable. But this creep is exactly what keeps you in the paycheck-to-paycheck loop. Lifestyle creep is the shadow of the Canadian economy. As soon as you get a raise, your expenses mysteriously rise to meet it. It starts with a slightly better car, then a nicer apartment, then more frequent dinners out at the newest trendy spot in the distillery district. We convince ourselves we deserve it because we work so hard. But this creep is a trap. It keeps your burn rate at 100% of your income. You're essentially working to maintain a facade of success while your net worth remains zero. The visceral pain of lifestyle creep is the realization that despite earning more than you ever have, you feel just as broke as you did in university. It's a psychological hamster wheel. We are addicted to the dopamine hit of a new purchase to distract us from the fact that our long-term wealth is non-existent. This is exacerbated by the suburban pressure to keep up with the Joneses. In the suburbs of Mississauga, Vaughan, or Surrey, the pressure to conform is a financial death sentence. This is the Joneses trap. We see our neighbors with the manicured lawns, the new Tesla, and the annual trip to Mexico, and we feel a visceral sense of inadequacy. What we don't see is the $300,000 of HELOC debt and the maxed out credit cards supporting that image. Canadians are masters of performative stability. We would rather be broke and look rich than be wealthy and look average. This culture of comparison is fueled by social media, where every friend is living their best life on borrowed time. Breaking free from this requires a level of social courage that most people don't possess. It means saying no to the group dinner or the destination wedding. It means being the boring one while everyone else is living large on the bank's dime. But if you don't break free, you'll stay trapped in the corporate ladder lie. We are taught that climbing the corporate ladder is the only way out. But the corporate ladder lie is that the higher you go, the more you are owned by the firm. Your salary increases, but so do your hours, your stress, and your required lifestyle. In Canada, the middle management trap is real.
You earn enough to be taxed heavily, but not enough to be truly wealthy. You become a high-income poor person. You have the title, the office, and the stress-induced gray hair, but your bank account is still a revolving door. The shadow fact is that the corporate structure is designed to keep you just comfortable enough so you don't quit, but just stressed enough so you don't have the energy to build your own wealth. You are trading your best years for a pension that might not exist and a gold watch that's actually gold-plated. But there is a secret wealth transfer happening right now that most Canadians are missing entirely. While the middle class is distracted by grocery prices and tipping culture, a secret wealth transfer is occurring. Capital is flowing from the hands of the workers into the hands of asset owners and the government. This is done through financial sophistication, using debt to buy assets that generate cash flow, while the rest of us use debt to buy liabilities that generate stress. The wealthy in Canada don't save money, they position it. They use the same tax laws and banking systems that trap us, but they use them as leverage. The curiosity gap is, how do you move from the extraction side of the economy to the accumulation side? It requires a total rewrite of your financial DNA. It means stopping the Canadian nice attitude towards your own money and becoming aggressive about your survival. The exit strategy isn't about working harder. It's about changing the very nature of your relationship with the Canadian dollar. The shadow fact we started with is this. The Canadian economy is no longer a ladder, it's a filter. It filters out those who follow the traditional rules and rewards those who understand the new math of the 21st century. To stop being poor without realizing it, you must first realize the game you are playing. You must stop viewing your home as your only investment, stop letting the big five banks dictate your returns, and stop the subscription bleed. The exit strategy is simple but painful. Live like no one else now, so you can live like no one else later. It means aggressive TFSA investing in growth assets, not GICs. It means ignoring the Joneses and their financed trucks. It means understanding that in Canada, the government and the corporations are not coming to save you. You are the only one who can build your ark. The curiosity gap is no longer, why is this happening, but what will you do now that you know? The treadmill is still running, but you are the only one who can choose to step off. Will you stay in the cycle, or will you finally wake up to the Canadian